So 1980 was a very big year for me. That's me, I'm in 5th grade. I'm in white in the corner, incredibly awkward. And it's 5th grade after all. And that was the year that my parents got divorced, which, of course, was horrible. But I also got to see my mom get her PhD in psychology. And she taught me so many wonderful ideas about psychology. And we would study side by side together after school. And I know this next part sounds weird, but I loved it when she would practice her homework on me. So she would give me Rorschach tests, and she would give me IQ tests. And I knew it was a really good week if my IQ went up, and I knew it was a bad week if my IQ went down. But throughout all of this, she was teaching me all these wonderful ideas about the mind and the soul. So another big thing that happened around this period is that it was Bring Your Parent to School Day. And I brought my father, who was a surgeon, and he also wrote best-selling books about the brain and human evolution, and invited him to class. So he came to class, and he placed a bucket on the table. And he proceeded to give a very, very good lecture about the brain. And at the end of the lecture, he invited all of the students to come to the table, and he lifted up the bucket, and there was a human brain in formaldehyde. And I was totally riveted, and all the kids freaked out, and I think that these events shaped my desire to make films about science and technology. How can I make these very complicated ideas accessible to a wider audience through images and emotions and stories? And somebody was just asking me today, they're like, did you always know you wanted to be a filmmaker? And I was like, I was supposed to be a surgeon. My father bought me the book, The Making of a Female Surgeon, on 4 separate occasions growing up. And when I'm editing, I was actually editing late at night, and after 10 hours of editing, we talk about it like film surgery, you're cutting, you're sewing, it's not my dad, the surgery my father did, but I'm contributing to different ways about the brain. And so 6 years ago, I was actually working on a film about the brain and the connected world with my father and my co-writers. And my dad was diagnosed with brain cancer. And he was given 9 months to live. He would have been great up on this stage. He was a wonderful speaker. And we were incredibly close. And after spending his life focused on the brain, that was the cancer he got. The irony was not lost on any of us. But right before he passed away, he was so excited about this book he had been working on for years about Leonardo da Vinci. And it was like one of those moments where he literally finished writing the book and then passed away days later. And what he was so excited to share with the world was he believed Leonardo da Vinci offered a glimpse into the future of our species. He was a pioneer in both art and science and a master at multidisciplinary thinking. He was also gay, vegan, and a pacifist, so he would have done great in San Francisco. And in the last 5 years, my brother and sister and I have worked really hard to get this unedited manuscript edited, and it's going to be released, and we're so happy. He would have been so happy. And I think his ideas are incredibly important right now. There's an idea in evolutionary biology that he refers to when there's an anomaly or a mutation in the species that's so different that it holds great potential for adaptation. And the actual term, the term is sport, like spelled S-P-O-R-T, but it actually comes from to sprout off of a species. And my father believed that Da Vinci was that sport, was that glimpse showing us the potential of what human beings could become. And I believe that we need that glimpse. My father was looking at this long period of evolution and into the future, and I'm really interested in today. What can we do today to kind of evolve ourselves, to rethink our potential? Our world is changing faster than ever. We have created a lot of technologies and machines that are replacing the things that we do. And also, there's going to be new jobs in the next several years and decades that we can't even imagine yet. So with that thinking, it's like, how do we adapt fast enough? There's a lot of change going on in this world. And not only how do we adapt fast enough, but how can we be more mindful to the adaptation that we're doing to the world? What do we need to do to kind of get that into focus and to evolve in a better direction? I believe that we need to rethink our human potential. And the way that we need to do that is we need to think about all the things that make us unique as human beings. All the things that machines will never be able to do. I'm married to a professor of robotics, and we spend a lot of time talking about all the things he wants robots to be able to do. And then he loves to tell me all of the things he believes they'll never be able to do. And it's a really interesting thing to think about, as there's a lot of anxiety about all of these technologies for the good, the bad, and the potential. So the good news is that our brains adapt and evolve very quickly and have been doing it for a long time. And it's all because of this term that I'm sure many of you know called neuroplasticity, and it's the brain's amazing ability to adapt quickly to a changing environment. And that really kind of means that your brain is always on. Your brain's always on. Every thought, every action, and every experience can reinforce some section of your brain, which is a really incredible thing to think about, that every single experience and thought you have is going to adapt you. It can change you. Every thought. And that also, even just thinking about thinking, like what we're all doing right now together, thinking about thinking, that's another amazing human strength. It's called metacognition, and it's actually being aware of how you think. And I always like to think, I'm so grateful that I can, before I do something, take a moment and think, is what I'm about to do a good thing? Is what I'm about to do something that could evolve me? Is it a reflection of who I want to be? In that moment that you get to go, you get to pause, that's an incredible human strength. And this is all in part because of tens of thousands of miles of white matter, which are the pathways all around your brain. And the more you use a pathway, the faster the information will be able to flow. So one unique part of this white matter is called the corpus callosum. And it actually connects the right and left hemisphere, and neuroscientists call it interhemispheric communication. And I like to think of it as the internet of the brain. I always think of things in internet terms because it helps me imagine what's going on in there. And what it really points to is that we use our whole brains to think. Different parts of our brains are good at different things. And that when you have the different parts connecting, I believe that's where new ideas come from, and that's where creativity comes from. And I think in the school system, my husband and I have two daughters. Odessa's 11 and Bluma is 5. And I'm always thinking, how can we be connecting more modes of thinking, more different ways of thinking in their lives? And there's so much focus right now on STEM, which I'm totally for, women, girls, science, and technology. And I want that, but not at the devaluation of the arts and the humanities. So I was talking to my daughter about it. So a lot of people are saying, oh, let's take STEM and turn it into STEAM. Add the A in there for the arts. But my 11-year-old daughter, Odessa, was like, you gotta add an H in there. So instead of STEM, it's STEM or STEAM. And then you get the arts in there. So I'm Jewish, and I love Yiddish. And it kind of sounds Yiddish. So maybe after this talk, that'll be the new buzzword. Let's get that into the school system and into the world. And we're already starting to see more cross-disciplinary thinking in the world, which is a good thing. I think people are starting to recognize we need to bring art and sciences together. And if you think about it, it used to be, think about my grandparents, or even my parents, you had one job and you did it for a lifetime, and that's just not the case anymore. But it was a good thing for a long time for civilization. It advanced civilization, we specialized, but now you have to be a lot more adaptable and a lot more flexible. And there's great research on simple things you can do to make your brain more adaptable and more flexible. And you all want to know what those are, right? These are all the things that are at the top of my New Year's resolutions every year. So here are the things that make your brain more adaptable. Sleeping more, exercising more, daydreaming, taking breaks. These are all simple things that you can do that increase the adaptability in your brain. So those are, in addition to thinking like, I need to do all of those things more. Here's a question for everyone here, and this is not as simple, but how can we bring that more, the cross-disciplinary thinking, the environment for adaptability into our homes, into our workplaces, and into our schools? And let's do a little cross-disciplinary thinking right now. I want you to sit, and I want you to think of your biggest challenge. Everyone in this room, we've all got a challenge that we're wrestling with, right? Think of the 3 people that you've talked to about that challenge. Now I want you to try to think of 3 people in completely different areas that you could talk to about that problem. What would a car mechanic say? What would a biologist say? What about an artist? What about a child? How would they approach your problem? That's cross-disciplinary thinking. And the more you do it and the more you think that way, the more it'll just naturally come. And I think that we're all talking about multitasking, but we need to be talking about multi-perspectiving, which is not a word. So multi-thinking. And how do we bring that more into our everyday challenges? The good news also is that the internet is allowing us to do that at an exponential level. We are connected to billions of people's ideas and perspectives that we can cross-disciplinary think with. And when you get that kind of collision of different perspectives, that is when breakthroughs happen. It's also when empathy happens. And empathy is another incredible thing that distinguishes us as humans, that even the most sophisticated machines can't experience. I loved learning this when I was researching empathy. Empathy is feeling into someone else. I love that, feeling into them. And I think that when you see someone struggling, you're feeling into them and you want to help them. You want to change their experience. So it's interesting to think about empathy leads to compassion, leads to action. So it's like, we need more empathy and action in this world, right? We definitely need that. So how are we going to do that? And the good news is that it's through stories, through listening to people, through sharing stories. That is the way that you feel empathy. And when you hear a story, it activates all these different parts of your brain. And also what it does is it adapts your thinking. When you hear a story, it can change the way you think about something. It can also synchronize your mind with someone else when you tell a story. And we think of our brains as private, as the only truly private thing we have. But we forget that our brains are incredibly public. The brain is a communal organ. It is our window on the world, and it's what allows us to connect with the world and contribute to the world. And now, with the internet, it's like we have this giant corpus callosum that's connecting everything, this huge interface for cross-disciplinary thinking and empathy. And if we can activate metacognition, accessing our own mind, and then tap into the global brain and access the expertise and wisdom from all over the world, there's incredible potential. Think about what Da Vinci was able to do with one brain and a notebook. And now we have billions of ideas floating out there across our own minds and across other minds and across borders. Just imagine if we tackled every single problem that way. That's the 21st century brain. And I think if we play to our potential as humans, that will lead to so many incredible things, all the things that robots and machines will never be able to do. So I'm going to tell you again the things that make us incredibly unique: metacognition, empathy, neuroplasticity, cross-disciplinary thinking, compassion, and initiative, which I loved spelled out Vinci, because that's like the highest compliment you can give someone, somebody filled with integrity and honor, is Vinci. And so if we play to those strengths, imagine what we'll be able to accomplish. Thank you.